bikepackers and bike travelers, welcome to another episode of the Chainwheel Diaries podcast, stories about bike travel told by the travelers themselves. I'm your host, Brian Berlin. Have you ever confronted a Mormon Cricket? Well, my guest today has, and cleverly assigned the highest level of bike travel body odor to this critter. His name is Robert Hickman. He's an artist and teaches sculpture at college and hails from Brooklyn, New York. Robert has undertaken many epic bike adventures, including 4 crosses of the U.S., the Great Divide, the Baja Divide, Trans-Mexico, and half of Japan. In this episode, he shares what he's learned from his bikepacking and bike travel adventures, and there's good stuff in there for my listeners. With that, let's meet Robert Hickman. Hi, Robert. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
So you have an impressive cycling history. I found a few highlights in your bio on Crazy Guy. By the way, Robert's journals on crazyguyonabike.com. You've got to check them out. They're very detailed. I feel like I was there every step of the way on your ride in the northern half of the Baja Divide. But in addition to that, it appears you crossed 21 bridges in New York on a unicycle. Is that right?
500 bridges.
Okay. And the Florida Keys on a unicycle.
First person to have done that.
All right. That's a notable achievement. Looks like a few trips or several trips across the U.S. You did the Trans Am. You did the Northern Tier. You did your own COVID ride from Brooklyn to Astoria, Oregon. You also did parts of the Southern Tier as well, I believe.
I did that in 3 sections. So
Three sections.
I've crossed it 4 times.
Did you start east and go west, or west and go east?
St. Augustine to New Orleans, New Orleans to El Paso, and El Paso to San Diego.
Okay, cool. And recently, the northern half of the Baja Divide, which we'll get into a little bit later. It's an impressive, and this is not even the complete list, I might add. So let's start off with, tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you're doing.
So I'm an artist and college professor. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I've always been a cyclist. I get around New York. I get to my job and do all my errands by bicycle. My kid growing up, we had a tag along, then we eventually got a tandem. I do all my heavy lifting, everything, just pile everything up on the tandem. Anyway, when my son graduated from high school, it had always been my dream to cross the country. And so I did the Trans Am back in 2016. And when I was finished, I was so depressed because it was just the trip of a lifetime until I realized I could do it again. And so as a college professor, I get all my summers off. I get a nice winter break and I get spring breaks. So every summer I take a trip. And every winter break, I take a trip. Yeah.
What are you teaching? What's your
teach
curriculum?
I teach sculpture. And so my students, refer to me as MacGyver because just whatever, like a couple of weeks ago, they forgot to bring rulers. So I just started pulling cardboard out of the trash. You can use that as a straight edge. Really good problem solving.
Great. All right. Let's inspire some listeners to take up bike travel. What motivated you to take up bike travel and when did you start?
Let me think now. So when I was a kid in high school, I did a 100-mile ride from Cincinnati to Xenia, Ohio, and I spent the night up there and then came back. And then years later, 20 years or so ago, I rode around Sardinia, Italy. And that was before smartphones, and I didn't have the best map, and I didn't exactly know what I was doing. And then I had done the Erie Canal with a friend from Buffalo to Albany, and we stayed in Airbnbs and hotels. We didn't camp. And then the Trans Am was my first. Well, and then the Florida Keys trip on unicycle. We stayed in hotels for that. And with the unicycle project, there was a lot of writing involved. Keeping track of all the routes, maps, GPS, historical background, which is interesting to me. And I like to joke that it's a lot of work doing these rides. So I like to make it some work for my readers to have to read about this. Although it's a lot of work to also do all that writing. Yeah.
Yeah, your journals are incredibly precise and but they're still fun to read. And like I say, you describe all the flora and fauna and what you're seeing, what you're touching, what you're feeling, etc. And I think that's, number one, I think that's great. Number two, I think it really gives everybody some insight into what your mindset is while you're going through this.
Part of it is for me, so I can bring it back for myself and replay it and remember it. If I don't, and so I've got the voice memo going on my phone, which is on my handlebars, and I'll just take notes as soon as things happen. Otherwise, to be honest, I forget. So that's how I'm able to do it. And then at the end of the day, there's a lot of editing.
How are you uploading your journals? You must have been carrying a Surface Pro or a iPad, or how
Uh,
how did you do that?
I usually like to bring a laptop, but for the Baja Divide, my setup it was the my panniers weren't large enough, so I brought a an iPad. And usually I'm able to use my phone to upload those reports.
Excellent. All right, let's talk about the Baja Divide.
This whole tour was not very well planned. And yeah, I should have gotten wider tires. I just was busy in the fall and I kind of just I threw it together at the last minute. Um, and it was one of my least it was my least favorite tour. It was really hard. A lot of what was so difficult were the long nights. The days were really short. By 6 p.m. it was pitch black and freezing and I had to be in my sleeping bag. So 12 hours a night in my sleeping bag. And so yeah, I couldn't get a lot of writing done. And yeah, it was really difficult. The terrain, and if you've read my blogs, I like to have a good beer at the end of the day. And there was not a lot of that in Baja. There were a few times where I was able to get a good beer or some good food, but well, half the nights I was camped out in the middle of nowhere, eating refried beans. Not the greatest.
What motivated you to undertake the Baja Divide? Somebody must have said, "Hey,
No, so a couple of years ago, I did the Trans-Mexico, and I did that in two parts, from Mazatlan to Mexico City and Mexico City to Oaxaca. And that was, especially the first leg, Mazatlan to Mexico City, was magical. I went through all these towns that I'd never heard of, these silver cities, Zacatecas, Durango, Guanajuato, and anyway, I wanted to connect my North American network, all the trans cross countries, and also the Great Divide, and also the Southern Tier to the Mexico route. I mean, we hear of people doing Alaska to Tierra del Fuego. I've also done the Carretera Austral in Chile. I don't think I'll ever get all that connected up. But it was a matter of, yeah, connecting US and Mexico route.
okay." But did you know it was going to be as daunting an undertaking when you launched into it? Probably better that you didn't, you know?
I knew it was going to be tough. So the last time out on my gravel bike was the Silk Road mountain race in Kyrgyzstan, which I trained for a year for that, and I came back completely broken, bruised ribs, messed up shoulder, a knee infection, a hernia, and that took me out for 6 months. So that's why I didn't tour that winter last year. And I swore to myself that I would never do something so grueling again. I knew the Baja Divide was going to be tough, but I didn't know it was going to be so cold because the past trips to Mexico had been much warmer. And it's not a good idea for me to ride at night. I get lost. I make mistakes. I messed up my pulley chain ring. It got it caught in the spokes. That's because I was riding in dusk. It's so I didn't want to do that. I did ride it after dark a couple of times, but yeah, by 6 o'clock it was pitch black.
Yeah, I did note that you rode in the dark a couple of times, had your lights on, but still you don't know where you are. It's unknown terrain, and that's why they call it an adventure, right?
Like, oh, well, Baja Divide. So there was a section, 3 days with no resupply. So I carried 13 liters of water on the back of my bike. And one of those days where I was in the middle of nowhere, two different Americans stopped and gave me beers, which when you're on a bike ride in the
And they
middle
could
of the
tell,
day,
and they could tell you needed them right then.
a cold beer, a cold IPA, it really hits the spot.
All right, you've undertaken some grueling rides, and the other one I wanted to talk to you about is the Great Divide. Many people have tried that. Did you start all the way in the northern part and ride to the southern tip? Tell
So
me
because
about that.
So because of my teaching schedule, I did it the other way around. So it was 21. COVID was still going on, and I did the Western Express from Pueblo, Colorado to San Francisco. And I met a guy named Jeff Spence who was doing the divide northbound, so Antelope Wells, and he went to the Canadian border. And he's also a college educator. We just met at a truck stop for like 30 minutes and we stayed in touch. We follow each other. We're in touch all the time. But he gave me the idea to go northbound. So I started in Antelope Wells and then I went all the way to Jasper.
Okay.
And I found the Great Divide. I mean, I trained for that too. It was much easier than I expected. It really didn't give me that much difficulty.
What time of year did you ride the Great Divide?
So late May through into July.
Okay.
Because I was going northbound, most of the riders go southbound. So, and because I blog, I like to stop and talk to everybody, take their picture, get their name. It becomes part of the story. So, and then also the racers too. So I stopped. I met a lot of the racers, and yeah, certainly Trail Angels down in New Mexico. There were some stretches with no water, and people had coolers set up, boxes full of candy. That was really appreciated. Yeah, there were really only two difficult sections for that. Coming into the Tetons, I had snow, and that was really bad. And then in northern Montana, another episode with snow, like chilling, really, really cold. That was the year that the racers a lot of them had to be evacuated.
Hmm.
Snow. Um, so I now travel with a poncho to deal with because rain jackets. I've yet to find a rain jacket that really repels water. You do not want to get cold.
So let's dial it back a little bit and get some people interested in the bucket list, which is riding your bike across the United States. When did you first come up with that idea and how'd you tackle it?
So yeah, my son graduated from high school in 2016, and a couple of weeks later, I drove down to Yorktown, and I had, I was nervous. I had put together a list. Actually, I had followed a lot of people's blogs and read them religiously. And I think your gear list is really important. I keep track of everything, and then I always do a review at the end, so I know what works. And it's evolved over time. So yeah, I was pretty prepared. I started with two other guys, and to be honest, at first, we stayed in churches, we stayed in fire departments, and I wasn't real comfortable camping at first. But I don't know. I finally got over it, and so I stealth camp everywhere now, and I can sleep anywhere. And talk about stories. God, the places that I've slept, the places I've set up my tent. You roll in after dark. Nobody knows you're there. Nobody sees you. You wake up with the light and you're gone. I've camped in people's backyards. I've camped in historical cabins in Nevada. I'm very, very comfortable with it. Usually pick up some supplies an hour before I know I'm going to be camping. Yeah, and I can roll. I can get a lot of mileage that way. And it was easier than I thought it was going to be, and I ended up finding a bunch of really fun people to travel with, and we had the time of our lives. I mean, just laughing hysterically, all sorts of hijinks. And I felt that it really kind of started after Kansas. Kansas was grueling. I mean, it just took forever to get across it, a straight line, perfectly flat. But once we got to Colorado, things opened up. It was easy to just camp anywhere. Again, God, the Tetons, still one of my favorite mountain ranges. It's so beautiful out there. And what, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, it's so beautiful. I really fell in love and made friends for life. My friends Klaus and Eileen, I made them a beautiful gift for their baby daughter. We stay in touch. We visit one another. We all stay in touch with friends for life. Yeah.
Part of it is the bond of between cyclists. You're doing something that you love to do, but people who don't cycle really don't get it. People who do cycle really do. And people who cycle, they have something in common and can carry that forward.
We were so silly. We talked about the levels of cleanliness, and so sometimes we would go 3 days, 4 days, or God forbid, 5 days without a shower. And so we came up with these levels, and I don't know. I think it was Oregon. We came across these Mormon crickets, which were the most disgusting, like cockroach creatures that we'd ever seen. Mormon crickets eat one another. They're cannibals, and so we said level 5. You're on the level of a Mormon cricket, but and we would try to clean ourselves as often as we could, sneaking into campgrounds and using the showers, or sneaking into our RV places and using their showers. So many hijinks. Yeah.
So I think that's great advice that people, that I talk to that are undertaking bike travel for the first time, they really get wrapped up in that whole where will I shower, where will I sleep, where will I eat kind of thing. But it's doable. I mean, you're showing that MacGyver thing, that you talked about earlier, comes into play when you're trying to be flexible and creative and get the job done. Sounds like you figured it out.
I don't even travel with a towel anymore. It takes up too much space. Last summer, I toured in Japan, and in fact, I'm going back there this summer to do the second part of it. So, completist. I'll have done complete length of Japan, and there there's onsens, there's baths everywhere. So I sometimes wash 2 or 3 times a day.
Of the routes you've taken across the US, do you have a favorite or do you like all three? What would you
Trans Am,
recommend?
Trans Am. The
Yeah.
first, the first, first is the best. It was so good. It's so beautiful. It's a great route. Yeah.
What were your
Um,
favorite parts?
all of it. Virginia's gorgeous. Kentucky, even the dogs chasing you, the coal trucks. It's beautiful. Um, Missouri is beautiful. Kansas is tough. Kansas is tough. And also Eastern Colorado. But then once those mountains hit, it's just magical. Guffey, there's a character there. I stayed in his town. Uh, all of Colorado. Yeah, the mountains. Wyoming. It's so good, all of it. And then yeah, especially I've always lived in the East, so the West to me is magical. Oregon is so beautiful. As Idaho, Montana. Yeah. But it's all good. It was all really, really good. I highly
I
recommend it.
told you we'd get back to your gear list because you're so precise on that. How did you learn to put that all together? Was it trial by error, or did you have a plan to begin with?
So the name escapes me, but I followed someone, and he had crossed the country a couple of times, and so I used his gear list. And one of the funny things that he had on his list was a 10-foot extension cord, which I brought, and I traveled with it twice on cross country routes. And sometimes it's really useful, like if you're camping at a campground and you can run it to your tent, so you can have power in your tent. I've become really conscious about weight now, so I don't do that one anymore. Yeah, I no longer travel with a towel. I travel with what only is absolutely necessary. Yeah, one pair of cycling pants is enough. Really, only one pair of underwear, two shirts, be, because yeah, you really don't. There's so much you don't need. Yeah, try to keep it as light as possible, especially for the bike packing routes, because you're having to carry all that stuff, and if you have to carry like Silk Road Mountain Race, I was having to lift my bike over boulders, and that weight adds up really, really quickly. So for bike packing, I do travel heavier. Like friends of mine, they consider me to really travel heavy. So I have a rack with rear panniers, or at least bike packing panniers, and then I've got rolls strapped to my front fork. So I've got a tent and sleeping bag on one fork, and then tent and thermarest on the other fork, and then a frame bag and a handlebar bag. And I mean, I cannot get it any lighter. And plus, yeah, I like to have a two-person tent. I like to, what if it rains? I'm a tall person. I like to have space inside my tent. So it's worth it to me to have that a little bit extra weight and volume. Um, Absolutely, I'm going to travel with a thermarest. I like a warm sleeping bag, but I know guys do it with the quilts, no sleeping bag, no tent. But I'm not willing to do that.
What kind of tent are you carrying? What kind of sleeping bag? Let's get into a little more detail.
So I just bought a brand new tent after Baja Divide because both the zippers had failed. So it was my tent that I'd had since the Trans Am, the 2016. And it had some tears and some holes. So I got a new MSR. It's kind of like the Hubba Hubba. It's the latest version. And they're back to the aluminum poles, which I like. And then sleeping bag I've had since, gosh, I was, it's a what is it? Feathered Friends out of Seattle, and I've had it a long time. And then they rebuilt it, say 10 years ago. And I'm kind of sentimental about that. Sleeping pad, the Thermarest Neo Air. I'm now on my third one because they do get little leaks after a while. And
Yeah, they
yeah,
do, and you can't find them.
Baja Divide, I was having to wake up in the middle of the night and reinflate it.
Been
So
there, done that. Boy, that's painful.
I'm on my third one, but it's worth it. Good night's sleep. Um, yeah, so that's sleeping. I don't bring a stove anymore. It's just too much weight and too much space. And like if you're going to if you're flying into Mexico or a foreign country, sometimes it's hard to find the gas. Um, and yeah, I just bring cans of beans, so it's not high cuisine at all. It's pretty much just feeding myself and going to sleep.
Just
Um,
getting the job done.
yep. And I'll go to restaurants when I get into town.
When you started out, did you do any trial runs? Did you do shorter rides or did you jump right in?
So yeah, planning for the Trans Am, I did do a number of fully loaded. I did a ride up to Wave Hill, which is a little bit north of New York, and then I did an overnight at Bear Mountain just to test everything out, which was useful because I wear reading glasses, and I hadn't known. Yeah, I couldn't read my GPS. I couldn't read my phone, so it's like, oh, I needed bifocal sunglasses. So that was really useful. You learn things. You learn how hard it is to go up a steep hill when you're fully loaded. And then, oh gosh, for Silk Road, I mean, I did tons of training for that. Baja Divide, I did absolutely none. Um, Japan last summer, yeah, I did a trial run, an overnight north of the city with everything I was going to take. But now, again, I have these lists, so I know exactly what I need. So I can, like Baja Divide, it was just a few days before I just went down the list and checked everything off.
Somebody's ready to undertake this. They're enamored of the idea of bike travel, bike packing, and they've watched some YouTube videos, they've read some articles, and maybe they've even listened to my podcast. But what advice would you give them? How would you give them some motivation, give them a pep talk about undertaking this and what they can expect?
So on TV, we see car commercials with cars flying through the landscape, and they talk about freedom. And you do not experience freedom in a car. You do not experience freedom in a plane, on a bus. But on a bicycle, you absolutely do. It's the truest sense of absolute freedom. You can go as fast as you want, slow as you want. You can stop anywhere. You can do a U-turn. You can park anywhere. It is absolute freedom. You can go anywhere. It's so funny in my neighborhood, I'll see people with these big Jeeps and SUVs, and I'm thinking, why do you even need this? Like on my bicycle, I have been over huge mountains, places where it's impossible to get any other way. You can't even do it with a motorcycle. And like in Baja, I met guys on motorcycles from California who were making the drive south. And it's like, I can put my bike on a plane. I can take it apart, stick it in a box. I can literally go anywhere. So it's absolute freedom. I would say that's the biggest sell.
I agree. You said something that triggered another thought. People wonder, how do you get from point A to point B logistically, getting your bike and your gear if you're not riding out your front door? How do you get from point A to point B and move everything there and get your bike there, get it boxed up, get it unboxed, so forth? How did you manage that?
So flying with a bike is stressful because I've had things go wrong. So the first time I went to Mexico, I get out to the airport, and so nowadays, I guess a lot of the bicycle boxes they put pictures of televisions on the box so that couriers will be more careful with them. So Delta thought that I was flying with a LCD television screen, and you're not allowed lithium ion batteries in the luggage compartment. So I get to Mazatlan and I had to wait 4 days for my bike. I was so stressed. So and then let me say, I've also another time going to Mexico, I get out to JFK and I find out no cardboard boxes allowed on this flight. So the Uber is $100. And plus I had already reserved a hotel down in Mexico City. So I mean I was out $300. I now travel with air tags in the bike and my luggage. But it's always really, really stressful. Like when I can look out the window and I can see my box loaded onto the plane, it's such a good feeling to know that it's going to be there with me. I'm always so paranoid that it's not going to show up because then it throws everything out of whack. It throws your schedule out of whack, you know. But when it works out, so arriving at an airport and putting your bicycle together and riding out of the airport is the greatest feeling.
I imagine it is. Now, at the end, you have to find another box, right?
You do, yes. But see, San Diego, I ended there after the Southern Tier, so I already knew a shop to go to, a great shop there. They hooked me up with a box. Um, just called an Uber from the bike shop after it had been uh, packed up and took it back to the hotel. It was very, very smooth. I've never had a hard time finding a box, like in Mexico, down in Chile. Some places, like in Japan, I'll have the hotel hold on to the box so I can reuse it. I did the same thing in Kyrgyzstan. But yeah, that a lot of thought goes into that. And you know, I joined Facebook groups. So there's a Baja Divide Facebook group. There's Japan cycling Facebook groups. So you learn about different things. I mean, I had a lot of different bike store options in San Diego and heard about other bike shops down in Baja. Um, you find out, you get advice from other people. Like I could have gotten into Mexico without a visa, but there are road stops along the highway and you have to show them the visa. So it was worth spending an hour, spending $30 to do that so that I wouldn't get in trouble later. Finding out how the buses work down there to get my bike on a bus to come home, the correct bus station to go to in Tijuana. So yeah, I always do my research.
I agree. I think the Facebook groups are a great place to get. It's a ton of advice, and you'll hear everybody will have an opinion on something, but it's all good, usable experience. And obviously, you've utilized that well. So we'll pass that along to the listeners. I think it's a great idea. All right, Robert, what have you got coming up next?
I'm going to Japan in late May. Last summer, I cycled from Tokyo to the bottom of Kyushu, the southern half of Japan. So this summer, I'm going to cycle from Tokyo to the top of Hokkaido. So it's a route loosely called the Length of Japan. So I'll have that in the books.
You're riding solo with a group?
I always ride solo.
Good man. All right. Anything else, Robert? It's been a real pleasure talking to you. You are quite the bicycler.
It's a lot of fun. I just got a brand new bike, carbon fiber, for riding around the city with my buddies. So I now have four bikes. A little bit of a problem, an addiction problem here, but I've got big enough space to store them all. So four bikes and one unicycle. Yeah, so quite a cyclist here.
Oh, you're in good shape. And I love to hear how you're not just doing these gnarly bike trips, but you're also riding as a form of transportation. I live in the LA area. We have the weather, we don't have the infrastructure. In New York, I think it's a much different thing. There's plenty of bike paths. Cyclists are respected more than they are in LA. And so I'm jealous to a certain extent that you can utilize your bicycle for more than just adventure.
I mean, I know exactly how long it's going to take to get to work. It's 15 minutes to one job, it's 35 minutes to another. I can perfectly time it out. And now that we've got congestion pricing here in New York, it's made my commute even more stress-free. It's really calm traffic. People aren't as angro and honking. Yeah, it's great. It's how I do all my transportation, bicycle.
Well, good on you. Keep it up. Keep in touch. Thanks for coming on the podcast and regaling us with your adventures. You've had many of them, and I hope you have many more.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Enjoyed it. Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.